One ringy dingy, 317,421 divided by the square root of Foxtrot Alpha ringy dingies.
Hello, Field. Hello, Denise, and hello to the assembly.
Well, there's no assembly here yet, but it's, Denise and I, we're just signing books because the new book got here. And we're signing one to Telford Russian, and that's number 73. And I just signed one, number 65, for Craig Peterson. And then there's a lot of people that'll be getting here today and tonight. But anyway, over to you, David. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I'm intrigued at the visits to the website that went up from about 7,000 2 days ago. It had shrunk considerably, and then it was 32,000 yesterday, and we may hit 50,000 today. So I'm wondering what people think of the cause of that.
Well, you'd have to ask them. I don't know. Now, who gave you those numbers?
It's on the website.
Yeah, I know, but I saw an email from someone to you. Who was that?
Well, I just took it off the website. No one told me about it.
Yeah, I got an email between you and someone. But anyway, let's not belabor the point. My point is those numbers not only go up and down, but they also get manipulated by the bad people. So, you know, whatever they are, and it doesn't matter to me. I did get in fact, I don't want to offend somebody, or if I'm going to offend them, I want to do it on purpose, whichever it is. I think there's a Bravo Tango in the chat room. And her last name is very similar to yours. And she sent me an email, and I didn't know who she was because she used a real name. And she just said blah, 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 blah. And we can probably quadruple your numbers, especially if you'll take that picture of Governor Scott Wallace, or whatever his name is, Scott Walker, off the show ad. And I said, nope, I won't take it off the show ad. And I did quote you in your numbers. I said we had 7,000 on Tuesday, 32,000 on Wednesday, and we're on track for 50,000 today. But once again, David, I don't put much faith in those numbers because they can be manipulated. But it's still nice to see them go up. Over to you.
Yes. Anyway, I have a theory. I had a friend who called me yesterday and said, or asked me if I'd seen, and I couldn't find it. So whether it's just hearsay, I don't know. When Trump came back from his visit to Putin in Helsinki, apparently a number of people in the States felt that he disrespected the intelligence services, and maybe he did or he didn't, I don't know.
I think he did, and I think he should, but keep going.
Okay, and this friend of mine said, and Kelly hit the roof, and he said, this friend of mine told me that Kelly was going to make a public statement removing some of the disrespect that he thought Trump had, unless Trump withdrew his comments. And then there was some obscure change in what Trump thought he said. He went back through the transcript, and a would was changed to would not. And Trump ended up by concluding there's no reason why Putin or Russia wouldn't interfere in the election, which is a double negative, which confuses me. But let me tell you what I think is happening with the hits. And I agree with you that they're being played with. In fact, in my conversation with Jason, I mentioned this existence of the social engineering protection appliance that was patented by Kinetic North America, which incidentally runs the Boscombe Down Ministry of Defence airfield right near Porton Down in Wiltshire.
Yep.
And it's where I believe the Novichok samples were brought in to poison a number of people in the Wiltshire area and make it look like the British government is unable to protect its citizen and set up Russia as the fall person. Anyway, that's just a theory, but you know, we'll develop that. So I don't have hard and proof evidence that Kelly hit the roof. I sense that he was probably ignored, but annoyed. But here's a theory field, and it can be shot down. I believe Kelly has been absorbing, or Kelly's advisors, the briefs that have been sent to him. I think we're up to 318, and it was a lot of material. And they've gone back over the success of taking out some of the domestic terrorists in the United States. And one of the problems that the Department of Justice has come up with that prevent you from America from prosecuting and nailing terrorists and having them executed is that the Department of Justice puts a lot of roadblocks into the tapping of their phones. So Bernardine Dawn and Bill Ayers, Bernardine Dawn, I believe, invented the three-finger fork salute for the Black Panthers after someone stabbed Sharon Tate in the belly with a fork. She's a pretty disgusting human being. She used to lecture at Northwestern University on torture paradigms and practice. Bill Ayers believes that he wished he'd done more. That was an interview after 9/11. We know that they blew up a woman's washroom in the Pentagon in 1972. Whole string of attacks that should have put them on death row, but they got off on technicalities because apparently the monitoring and surveillance was not given a warrant by the justice system. So I think General Kelly, who's not a fool, and Donald Trump, who's not a fool, they looked at this and said, well, and I'm just being hypothetical, the material that we're getting from this organization, Able Danger, whoever they are, is good, but it wouldn't justify tapping the phones of some of these really bad people, like your sister and Hillary Clinton and Michelle Obama and Barack Obama. So why don't we alert Trump, alert Putin, and we can collect the data and the information from Putin, and then it's coming from a foreign source. So I think the work that we've done collectively has been transmitted through to the Russians. The Russians, for example, looked at your theory on the Sukhoi crash, and I know that you'd written independently to the Russian, was it the ambassador in Washington that you communicated with, Field? Over to you.
No, it's the military air attaché whose name, when I first communicated with him around the 10th or 12th, in fact, I'll say the 12th of May of 2012, the guy's name was Colonel Nikolai Blednev. Now, somebody can find that letter, and that somebody's probably going to be me, but the letter that I sent to him is on the internet, and the significance is I put a cover sheet on it effectively, and I said, you know, even if you don't understand what I'm talking about, please send this to KGB, and if they like it, then perhaps they will share it with Victor Papa. And they did share it with Victor Papa, and they did like it at KGB, and I know that because 2 days after I sent them the letter, the Russian mainstream media published an article saying that the technology that appears to have taken down the Sukhoi superjet in Mount Salak, Indonesia on the 9th of May of 2012 is American technology. That's a true statement. I later sent them another communique that I don't think I made public, and I said, yeah, you're right, it's American technology, but the people that deployed it are probably north of the 49th parallel, meaning Canada, meaning Bombardier, and meaning Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett had a $9 billion investment in the Bombardier, I call them crap jets, they call them CS jets. I don't know what the S stands for, but CS 100 and CS 300. Well, they're dead ringers for the Sukhoi jet that was out 3 years earlier. And so they had a huge marketing disadvantage. The Canadians did reference the Russians. And the Russians are really shrewd because they took off-the-shelf technology that Boeing had, and they slapped that in their Russian jets. I'm sure they did that under license with Boeing. And it was that Boeing technology, the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot, that actually was used to crash that jet into Mount Salak. However, it was not Americans that did it, in my humble opinion. It was, and of course my humble opinion is sort of strengthened by the fact they've done jack diddly squat in the last 6 years to push back against my opinion that was in writing, and the Russians rubber stamped it. So I think they're totally AFU. But in addition to having said all that, there were two more times when I sent Russia an explanation of what happened to their jets. Now, it's hard for me to remember details, as everyone understands. But I think it was on October 31st of 2014 that a Metrojet A321 was destroyed over the Sinai airspace, which is controlled, believe it or not, even though the Sinai... David, where's the Sinai? Isn't that... Well, I'll just ask you, do you know where the Sinai is? Your microphone's off. Okay.
Between Egypt and Israel, I think.
Yeah, and I think it was the airplane crashed in the Sinai in Egypt, but believe it or not, the airspace was controlled by Israel. And so I wrote another letter to KGB and the air attaché in Washington, D.C. And if anybody really wants to know where he's located, it's on Tunlaw Road, Northwest. And if people think I have a good memory, no, I don't. My sister, Christine Marcy, who's the second most evil person living in the United States of America, of which I'm aware, I don't know, maybe G.H.W. Bush is dead, maybe not. He's emotionally and spiritually dead. But anyway, my sister used to live at 4400 Tunlaw Road Northwest in Washington, D.C. So when I got this address for the military attaché on Tunlaw Road Northwest, I thought, you know, God's really kind to me because he keeps making this easier and easier for me to remember details. For instance, the last time the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot and FADEC were used to take down a Russian aircraft was on Christmas morning, the 25th of December of 2015. The aircraft was a Tu-154 Mike, and it was taken off from Sochi, S-O-C-H-I, in the Russian Federation, and it was destined for Syria. And according to the Russians who operated the flight, they had a Russian Christian choral group on board that was going to sing to the Russian soldiers deployed in Syria. And somebody noticed for the, please notice for the record, I didn't say anything about Serco, George Soros, Senior Executive Service, Warren Buffett, George H.W. Bush, Obama, Christine Marcy, or the Clintons' party of three, who like killing black people with U-2s, as long as the tail number is 80-1076. So the last time that somebody dared knock down an airplane using what we've called the Strangler Suite at one point, and we also call it the Baker's Dozen. Baker's Dozen means 13. Well, I came up with that term, and Craig Peterson, in fact, if anybody can find that image of Baker's Dozen, please put it up. And if nobody can find it, I'll put it up because I know I can find it. But I came up with Baker's Dozen when they took down the 13th airplane, and then they've taken down two more. So we're up to 15 jets destroyed by the globalists. Notice for the record, I didn't say Christine Marcy, G.H.W. Bush, Obama, Clinton's party of three. I clearly said the globalists, who are now dead in the water entirely. So the Russians sort of like our research, David, and in today's radio show ad, I'm quite certain, although I'm not 100% certain, somebody just put up, I'd want to honor David Rusin, which is Telford Russian. He put up a picture of the nose of an aircraft, and that is the U-2 80-1076. And that paint, it shows a dragon, and it shows a red, white, and blue Puerto Rican flag. David R. just put up Baker's Dozen. Thank you very much, David R. No wonder I signed your book. In fact, I'll do one better. Let me find, just to show that we're live and unscripted, let me find David's book. Yeah, this is it. It says Telford Russian. Now, watch this, David. I'm going to take the same pen, and I'm going to write Clinton U-2 80-1076. Just give me a moment, David. I'll be right with you. This is very important from a honesty and an accountability standpoint. Clinton U-2 80-1076. And I almost put down kill blacks, but I don't want black people to think that I don't like black people. I love them. I think some of the best or some of the most ambitious and energetic Christians in the United States of America are black people, and let me tell you why. But first, there it is, Clinton U2 80-1076. And this is David's copy, David Telford Russian, number 73. It says, "To David, thank you for all your efforts in exposing evil, Denise X." And then my sloppy handwriting, Telford Russian, thanks for your friendship and tweeter. I said tweeter. It's Twitter, isn't it? It's Twitter, not tweeter. Okay, that shows that we're all human, because I clearly said tweeter, but it's Twitter efforts, and I signed my name. And this book is called Field of Honor, and I need to apologize to someone. The guy that told me to write this book is a fantastic artist in Florida, and he does, or he did, I think he's no longer with us, which is unfortunate, but he did about 900 DSTM. In fact, here's the logo right here, DSTM, Able to Injure. And then he's the one that made me write this book. I didn't want to write it. He came up with the title, Field of Honor. Then he changed the title to In the Field of Honor. And I like shorter titles rather than longer. So lately, well, about 2 weeks ago, Craig Peterson and I and Denise decided that we'd go ahead and publish this book. And I wanted it to match the other books. And I'm going to leave Denise here alone with David in a minute. And I'm going to go take a picture of our book rack where we have Field of Honor, Lemon Squeeze, Gadget Vent, and Foul BBR. And it's important to me, since this is a series of books called Shake Hands with the Devil, it's important to me that the books are all the same size, sort of the same style. They got the same picture on the back. They got a short title. This one's an exception. It's 3 words. The next 9 books will be 2 words. The next book, which may be out in August, is War Bride, and that's about Denise. And then the one after that, I don't want to offend anybody, so I'll tell you it's going to be 2 words, both of them starting with PH. And the first word is going to be phantom, and the second word is going to be offensive, which is okay. This book, by the way, David, Craig and I, oh, there's a picture. Oh, isn't this, look at this, Denise. I just opened towards the back. There's a picture of my mother, who's a war bride, and myself. And I'm sitting, I'll let people look. There's my mom on that page, page 394. And here's myself on this page, which is 395. This book had 399 pages. And the funny part is, Craig Peterson and I goofed up. And I think it was probably me, not him. But between the two of us, we had the wrong template. And so when I wrote what I thought was a 273-page book, it printed out 399. So anyway, David, I'm going to be continuing. Oh, this is lovely. You recognize the picture, Denise? Here's a picture of Telford Russian, Denise, and myself at Telford. And right underneath of it, there's a headline from the Washington Times in June of 1989. It says, "Homosexual Prostitution Inquiry Ensnares VIPs with Reagan and Bush." Well, GHW Bush, consider yourself in print. David, over to you. David Hawkins. Go ahead.
Well,
David, are you still there? Try turning your mic on. Huh. Now we have a conundrum. David's lost in space, so I'll go to email and see what somebody might be trying to do with me, or do for me, or do to me. Which brings up the song by the Captain and Tennille. Let's see. Oh, here's something from OYM Radio. I don't know what it's going to be. But it says, okay, what would be the best thing to do? Leave it till nearer the time and see if you can do it? I don't know. Anybody know anything about OYM Radio? I have reason to think it's in the UK or Ireland, and I'm leaning towards Ireland. And then someone else here just sent me someone being Ryan Vale. He's the guy that does the belt buckles. On the lighter side, apparently it's a image. So while we wait for David to come back, I'm looking at the image and I'll post it in the chat room if it's in keeping with what we're talking about today. Okay.
Can you hear me now, Phil?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You go ahead and talk, and I'll do what I need to do.
Okay. Yeah. I was just so impressed by your memory, but I guess we all know that that's pretty amazing. But going back to this hit count, so my theory is, and I'm ready to be persuaded otherwise, that Kelly recognized the meat of what we've been sending him. His conundrum was, under a corrupt Department of Justice, how to turn that into a prosecution, because these people are defended in depth within the justice system. And one of the ways they get off is because the accusations are made with a source that is unknown, it's a rumor, etc., etc. So we probably don't have standing in the courts of the United States. So I suggest that what Kelly and Trump did, or I hope they did, is they said, why don't we alert the Russians to what is going on with this Able Danger outfit, let Russian intelligence study it and see if there's any material or meat, let the Russians gather the evidence, and then apparently in Helsinki, Putin gave Trump 160 terabytes of data. That sounds an awful lot, I think it is, on all of the conspirators associated with what you and I have been investigating since 2006. It would be wonderful to think about it. Now, the problem for the conspirators is they don't know whether that's true or not. So when someone sent me this article, I've got it put up on the Able Danger site, the 160 terabyte story, and Putin handing it over, all that information over to Trump. And that's when the hits took off. So I think there's a mixture of people going to the Able Danger website. There's the evil ones looking to find out, if they can, what we might have said that could result in their incarceration or possibly a short period on death row. And then there are good guys who have been invigorated by what we've done and are really anxious that the material alleged to have been given by Putin to Trump will actually expose the people that we've, to a certain extent, succeeded, but to a very large extent we haven't brought them before a court of justice. So that would be my theory, and I hope that we'll end up the day with over 50,000 visits. And I know that the stuff can be manipulated up and down, but I'm going to come to two aspects of this. One is the emphasis on Kinetic North America, and Kinetic and Serco broke up the research establishment at Porton Down into two components, and one component, that was the social engineering component of using chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear and explosive weapons illegally, that was assigned to Kinetic. So Kinetic controls the social engineering of false flag events by monitoring the internet to see who's speaking the truth, like ourselves, and downgrading the hit count so that we gradually atrophy into meaninglessness, if that's not an unfortunate phrase. On the other side, Serco, with its ability to move Con Air SWAT teams into position in a conspiracy with your sister, can send people who are equipped to handle some of these poisons, if you will, to a crime scene and have them evacuated or exfiltrated, I think is the technical term, before anyone has the chance to investigate the crime scene and nail the perpetrators. So about the same time I got that 160 terabyte story posted, I did a little analysis of the Novichok poisoning in Wiltshire. So there were two phases to that event. There was Sergei Skripal, a former British double agent in Russia, and his daughter Julia, both of whom have been discharged to hospital, having been attacked with a substance that is supposed to be fatal. Well, they're still alive, so it's not necessarily fatal. And then there was a subsequent attack where this woman, her name is Dawn, and her surname escapes me, but she's dead. And her boyfriend is alive and angry. But it's an amazing story, because what has been said is that she sprayed Novichok through a perfume bottle on her wrists, and her wrists were damaged with the contact to this poison.
David, can I interrupt you?
Sure.
Did you read the radio show ad today?
I looked at it.
That wasn't my question. Did you read it?
No.
Okay. Everything you just said is in the radio show ad, and a lot more, because the story about the first man and his daughter is in the radio show ad. The story about the couple, the female who died, is in the radio show ad. And vastly more significantly, the term spray bottle is in the book that I wrote in February. Specifically, between the 3rd and 5th of February, I was using the term Operation Spray Bottle because I had written to the FBI and everybody else and told them they should have, in fact, I think I wrote to them on Thursday before the Super Bowl, maybe Friday. The Super Bowl was on Sunday, I think. And I told them that there was ample reason for me to think that there would be a chemical biological attack at the Super Bowl, and it could involve phosgene and, of course, Novichok, and I called it Operation Spray Bottle. So all the stuff you just said about the spray bottle is in the radio show ad, and that very well, because it's been in the radio show ad for a day or two, that type of aggressive exposure that's documented, because see this book right here, I know you're not looking at the camera, but the people that are listening to us on live stream, this book, which just got delivered today, right, Denise? Yeah, Denise and I, and actually Marcy was here when I actually opened the first box to get the books out. But these books talk about Operation Spray Bottle, and this book, David, was written on February 3rd and 5th. So people in Russia or people in the other 18 agencies have to know that we told the United States of America that there were plans to poison the people at the Super Bowl. And the reason I did that is because they've done it before. Who are they? The UK people. Do you remember, David, that they turned the lights out for about 15 minutes at the New Orleans Super Bowl about 4 years ago?
Yes.
And do you remember which UK company that was? I honestly don't, but I know they have. Okay, yeah, that's right. And who didn't one of the Soames brothers have a relationship with Agrico?
He was the chief executive officer when the 7/7 underground bombing and all of the kit was taken to New Orleans for the aftermath of the Hurricane Katrina bombing of the levees.
Yeah, and which one of those fat pigs are we talking about, Nicholas or Rupert?
Rupert Soames. Nicholas Soames is the one who rogered your sister, probably to help in the conception of your niece, who would be then the great-granddaughter of Winston Churchill.
Did you say he rogered her?
Well, the technical term apparently is Mendenhalled her.
Okay, is that sort of like butt ramming, but with a different destination?
I believe so, yes. I'm not familiar with it. But,
okay, back over to you. I just wanted you to know that all this spray bottle shit that the Russians and the UK and the US are arguing about, we published it 5 months ago. So now who's really doing good intelligence work for Putin and Trump? Is it the 18 official intelligence agencies that vie for budget dollars, or is it Able Danger?
It's Able Danger.
Of course it is. And the other 18 can kiss my ass. Over to you.
Right, including the Marine Corps intelligence activity that has been very lax. But moving on, you see, now when I saw it, and I'd forgotten that you had written and used this term spray bottle, what did you use?
Operation Spray Bottle. In fact,
okay,
watch
operations.
this. Hang on just a minute. let me just demonstrate something. Is Gobsmack here? And if Gobsmack is not here, I'll use Agent Bugs. Gobsmack is not here, so Agent Bugs, over to you. Would you and Telford please Google Operation Spray Bottle, Phosgene, Field McConnell, and Superb, S-U-P-E-R-B, Superb Owl, O-W-L. Now, Superb Owl and Super Bowl have exactly the same sequence of letters with just one variation, but the Superb Owl is at that place where all the Republicans and Democrats and evil bastards in our government go out in California and they Roger little boys. Are using your term. I would use the term butt ram. But some people are offended at that. In fact, you know what? I'm one of the people that's offended. I don't know why people like G.H.W. Bush and these other obvious reprobates. I'm trying to think of a polite word, but people like Alexander Haig and John McCain, they have a owl out there at the place in California that's name is Moloch, I believe, M-O-L-L-O-C-H. Would somebody just tell me if I'm right or wrong about Moloch the owl and what the name of that gathering is in California with all the faggots? Meanwhile, David, we can prove with this one radio show that we told the Russians and the Americans about Phosgene and Novichok, and the fact that Novichok, that's been deployed twice now that we know of in a spray bottle in Salisbury, that stuff appears to have been sourced at Northwestern University in Chicago. Is that not correct?
Yes, although there is another source, and that brings us on to the article that I got inserted into Able Danger at the same time as the story about Putin handing 160 terabytes of data to Trump. And that was the sequence, because when I heard, and I'd forgotten, like I say, about the spray bottle that you'd written or coined the phrase, when I heard that this Dawn Harris had sprayed her wrists with the perfume bottle containing Novichok, I went to double check and see if there were any patents relating to spray bottles or of Novichok containers or dispersion systems up on the web in the patent office, where, of course, as we know, Serco has managed to secure the outsourcing contracts for the United States Patent and Trademark Office processing or pre-processing of patent applications. And once again, I emphasize how important it is, and maybe now with the material handed to Trump by Putin, the Marines can go around to pick up the Serco operators at the United States National Visa Center, the United States Defense Ammunition Center, various FAA contract towers, and the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and get these suckers out of the hair of the American government, because as long as they're there, you are at risk from a man-in-the-middle attack through the chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive arsenal assembled by Serco and its global custodians, including an arrangement with Lockheed Martin for the atomic weapons establishment. So actually, I would say the dark forces around Serco are better equipped than the American military to prosecute a war, because they're operating from the inside out. So it turns out that there is a container that is being invented to distribute nerve gases, including Novichok. I put a picture up on in the chat room there. And there is an invention of a spray bottle. You put the two together, and I suggest you've got exactly from a description of the two patents, a description of who attacked the people in Wiltshire with this poisoning. And it wasn't the Russians, it wasn't the British, it wasn't the Americans. It's a network that is wide and deep that I call the Con Air SWAT team network, that can take a group of prisoners or parolees with particular skills, including making snuff films, fly them to a crime scene before the crime occurs, position them for the crime, and fly them out again to a different jail, to a different venue, or even have them killed, leaving a very subtle signature associated with the use of the patented devices. So when was the Con Air SWAT team network created? It was created in 1985 by your sister, when she used money stolen from the Department of Justice Asset Forfeiture Fund to buy a Boeing 726 for the United States Marshal of Prisoner Transportation System, and then proceeded, and again, how the depths of her evil, I think, have yet to be plumbed, if that's the right word.
Did you say plumbed or plunge?
Plumbed.
Yeah, we're plumbing her. Don't worry about that. But let me correct you. What type of an aircraft did you say?
I thought it was a Boeing 726.
No such thing. 727.
Oh, was it?
There's no such thing as a Boeing 726.
Must be a misprint.
Well, are you reading it, or are you?
No, it's from memory. I'm fairly sure I saw it in print, 726. It was the United States Marshal Prisoner Transportation System.
Yeah, I'm sure, David, I'm sure you didn't, because last time you talked about this, you clearly said 727, but go ahead.
Okay. And then she did, or around that time, and possibly the decade earlier, she introduced a prisoner medical services program. And I think we'll be able to demonstrate that she picked up where the MK Ultra program, initiated by the CIA and funded by Victor Rothschild or NM Rothschild, was launched in the beginning of the 50s. And what they decided to do was do it outside the reach of the FBI. RICO hadn't been developed yet, so murder for hire was still a rather fuzzy concept, I think, in American law. So they decided to develop this program at the Royal Victoria Hospital in Montreal with a man called Dr. Ewan Cameron. And people who, let's say, had depression, postpartum depression, or whatever, would go into this program in good faith, believing that they would be treated. And they were put through a mind control program where they were isolated. That is to say, they had tubes on their hands, they were blindfolded, they were had earmuffs on so they couldn't hear anything. And they'd spend weeks at a time. Apparently the term, or one of the terms used, is disassociating, so that different elements of their personality could be then treated separately with different kinds of drugs. So pursuing this idea that there's a whole array of patented devices that can be assembled for a particular crime, leaving a very little signature. Apparently Eli Lilly came up with a product that they patented in 1956 called lysergic acid acide. I think that rhymes with bromide or acide. And if you go through that patent, you find extraordinary long chemical formulations. And at school I hated chemistry, so I tuned that out. But at the end of the list of formulations, there's this extraordinary phrase that these formulations are useful for psychotherapy research because they can elicit rage and hallucinations. No, correction, characteristic patterns of rage and hallucinations in the patient. So let's say from the 50s to the 60s, you've got Dr. Ewan Cameron and the CIA, funded by NM Rothschild, playing with North American minds, Canadian and American, and turning, I would guess, these people whose personalities would be disassociated into potential zombies. That is to say, they could be given a pill, a time-release pill, so they would go for, let's say, 2 or 3 hours of rage, and then a couple of hours of hallucinations, and then subsequently forget what they've done. That would be consistent with the cruelty visited upon little John Benet Ramsey, the prostitutes at the BC pig farm, and the Shermans in Toronto on the 17th of December of last year, who were hanged side by side alive with their legs pointing away from the swimming pool. And presumably in their death throes, they were filmed by someone who went away with a snuff film and basically transmitted that snuff film through encrypted techniques like the onion router to various people in the generic drug industry, which indicated to people in the generic drug industry they'd better not interfere with Serco and its $100 trillion of assets under management through global custodians in major pharmaceutical companies, presumably like Eli Lilly or Shire PLC, which is a British/Irish concern. So that raid, and I'm coming to the international Con Air SWAT team that I believe was set up by your sister and Oliver Buck-Revels in the 70s and 80s after the MK Ultra program had closed down. I think that would explain how they can move in these psychopaths or zombie killers into a crime scene, have them switched on and then off again through various moods with drugs, perhaps through a subcutaneous release mechanism, or maybe a perfume bottle. Because why wouldn't these killers land at Boscombe Down airfield, maybe from the United States, maybe from a prison system, check through by kinetic, drive into Salisbury or Amesbury with the spray bottle, which is patented, and the Novichok container, leave it for Dawn Harris, I think that's her name, to pick up, knowing that then she's going to spray herself, she's probably going to die, and there's going to be a huge amount of publicity and manipulation of the media about who done it. And Elizabeth May or Theresa May can be made to look stupid. Maybe she is. Maybe they can make Vladimir Putin look like a bad guy, and maybe he is. But the point is, if you control a battery of weapons like that, that you can dip into the patent office, do an ad hoc attack, and then put it back in the patent office, I think there's a classic example of what I might describe, or some people might describe, as the deep state. Over to you, Phil.
Well, speaking of deep state, about 20 minutes ago, this is great. Okay, let me put up, I'm going to put up exactly what I just searched for, and I searched for it on Google. So if you don't use Google, don't bother searching. You might come up with something different. But I'm going to take the time to do this. I'm going to put up the search terms. Here they come. Whenever I put capital G, oops, that's F, capital G, colon, that means Google it. Here it comes. I'm putting it up right now. I just Googled operations. Oh, that's funny. Look what I just put up. Let me correct that. Although it worked. Spray bottom. It should be spray bottle. Operation Spray Bottle, Superb Owl, not Super Bowl, Superb Owl, Phosgene, and my name. And let me read to you, David, I hope you're sitting down. Watch this. Are you sitting down, David?
I am, Phil.
If you Google that, if you put that in Google, even spelling spray bottle wrong, spray bottom. Denise, I want you to see this too. See what comes up first? Can you see urgent warning? Yeah. Okay, David, I'll read this to you in the chat room. The very first thing that comes up on Google is capitals, urgent warning, exclamation point. Operation Spray Bottle, exclamation point. Date, February 1st. In fact, I'll put this whole thing in the chat room. February 1st, 2018, Abel Dangers Field McConnell gets inside information ahead of time somehow. A Phosgene attack at the Super Bowl, and then it says something else. Go to 2.0753 mark to hear him talk about Serco and the Super Bowl threat. Rumor mill regarding the Super Bowl, and get to the bottom. So I will post this. But anybody who wants to see it with their own eyes on their own screen, just Google exactly what I did. And I would suggest that you put Operation Spray Bottom. I did that by mistake. But here, and then right under it, it talks another able dangers everywhere. The very next thing, chapter 4, and when they say chapter 4, people, they're talking about chapter 4 in this book, which reminds me, let me just see if I can find chapter 4 in this book and see what it says. This is fun because, see, David, I've been telling you for a couple of years that we're all done. All we have to do is sit back and wait for the world to catch up with us. And I truly believe that. And I don't know where chapter 4 is. Boy, this is a long book. I won't waste any more time. When you're talking, I'll look for chapter 4. But this Google search, the second thing that comes up is chapter 4, Deep State Lesbos Operation Trainwreck versus something, which is probably Able Danger, dated February 5th. Once again, that's when I was writing this book. And it says, when Field McConnell woke up at 0558 on Super Bowl Sunday, he thought back 18 hours to finishing chapter 3 of Operation Spray Bottle, which was a blah, 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 a Field McConnell if phosgene is released at Super Bowl 52 by deep shit to lower tax rates for blah, blah, blah. So, David, how can the Russians not think that we're all over this spray bottle? How can they possibly not think that at this point?
I think they know it, and I think, it's we'll probably have to wait a long time for thanks, but thanks aren't so important. I think what is important is that our message seems to have crept through General Kelly in the White House and the Trump administration into the hands of the Russian intelligence, knowing that if the source of information comes from Russia, then the administration can't be accused of wiretapping citizens and they escape on technicalities, which is what happened to Bernardine Dawn and Bill Ayers, who should have been executed just like your sister managed to do with Timothy McVeigh. That poor guy, I don't know whether he was guilty or innocent, but I think from your sister's point of view, he was insufficiently zombified to be relied upon, so she had him executed, flew him on a Conair aircraft, and I think under murder for hire, that would make her guilty of being in an association engaged in murder for hire, because from my memory of the code, it's something like anyone who uses or travels or induces the victim to use or travel on interstate or foreign commerce for the purposes of murder for hire, where death results, shall face either life imprisonment or the death sentence. Now, what would you like your sister to do? Have a life imprisonment? She's going to have a lot of information that we need to pump out of her. Or the death sentence, Field, over to you.
I'm not pumping my sister. I'd rather pump a deflated volleyball. My sister, don't be laughing. I'm serious. By the way, we just got a call from somebody, and I'll get back to the fact that Russia is more of a Christian nation than the United States, which is not my opinion. That's a fact. But we have a caller, and it's funny because, and I'm not making this up, I was just going to ask this individual, I scrolled and saw he's in the chat room. That doesn't mean he's listening, but he's listening. He just called me, and so go ahead, Mike Delta.
Yeah, Field, good news keeps on rolling, and I'm very grateful. I did call Fidelity Investments up in Hingham, Mass, and Brendan, JC's associate, got the UPS package that you're very aware of as my power of attorney, and they're processing it and setting up the account. And once the account's set up, I understand there's nothing holding back on release of funds from, and this is just speculation we had just yesterday, DOJ asset forfeiture funds.
Hang on, let me just interrupt so David can hear me, because David's so old he can't hear. David, what the gentleman is saying is that his account at Fidelity is in the process of being funded in a, I believe, these are my words, not his. I think it's a fairly large funding amount, but the source of the funds, David, did you hear him say DOJ Asset Forfeiture Fund?
Yes, I did.
Okay, well, can you think of a bigger trick fuck than for my sister's Asset Forfeiture Fund funding a ranch in Texas and a private jet. Now, wouldn't that just drive my sister nuts?
Is that divine justice or something?
Well, it's called trick fucking, and I'm not the only trick fucker out there, but you know, people, I tell them all the time, and Pierce County, Wisconsin is about ready to get their lesson next week, I think. And if they're going to get a lesson next week, I'll put it on the Monday or Thursday show. But I've been very open, you've been very open about who's doing what to whom. And that's why when I got a call from a lady today and she says, why don't you take that picture of Scott Walker off the radio show? I said, we don't do custom orders. We know what we're doing. And if it offends you, you know, that's just sort of tough. It offends me too. And I'm ashamed to think that he's the governor of Wisconsin. But see, Scott Walker's the governor and he likes to dress up like a homosexual Nazi. Notice I didn't say George H.W. Bush. There's a senator running for re-election named Tammy Baldwin. She doesn't give a shit about veterans. Well, she's going to get voted out this round. There's another senator named Senator Ron Johnson in Wisconsin. I gave him 45 pages of documents involving treason and pedophilia, and he did jack shit, which means he's guilty. He's not been adjudicated, but he's guilty of misprision of felony, treason, for starters, and global pedophilia. So Mike Delta, David, let's both listen to Mike Delta and get more details. Then we'll kiss him goodbye and go back to normal. Go ahead, Mike Delta.
Yeah, Field, that's all true and correct. I can say this now with certainty, not hope for, certainty. Once the account is set up, and according to Brandon, I'm assuming it'll be done very shortly because they have all the signed documents me and my wife had to sign and a canceled bank check from, you know where, Situatland.
Yep.
And once that all is set up, and with that special code as we discussed on the document, do you recall that?
Yes, I'm quite certain I do, but go ahead and say it one more time so I'm 100% certain.
The code that was, shall we say, placed over the original code.
Yes, and it was in the upper right-hand corner. I recall it. Go ahead.
We're talking pre-Trump, post-Trump. That's what I'm saying for you.
Yep.
And you know exactly what I'm saying. Exactly.
Yep. And I'll explain that to them when you sign off, and you'll hear me because I'll do it live.
Yes, please do so. And what it was is they were going to pull the old switcheroo, bypass the entire legal system. The guilty would go free, but Trump got elected. The Marine generals, actually, General Mattis, Kelly, Dunford, and to a lesser extent, General Ruach, I don't believe, but they're all very close, all of them,
Yep.
those four generals. And General Dunford intervened in somewhere around 2015. Old man Bush, the Nazi, gave the order to steal the election, and that's when I believe with certainty General Dunford stepped in and said, I don't think so.
Yeah, I understand. So can I explain that to everybody? Yes,
and we're in the post-Trump era. That's why it was pasted over the original account number from DOJ Asset Forfeiture Fund, as we discussed, and it's a far greater sum going through the system. Far, like B as in plural.
No, I understand everything. So you sign off, and I'll call you after the show. If you come up with another thing, call me. But I can explain this right now, and I will. Bye bye. David and everyone else, what he said, it's very important people listen to this. He talked about pre-Trump and post-Trump. This guy was a pilot whistleblower, or is a pilot whistleblower like me. And for the last 15 years, he's been jacked around by the previous administrations, plural, including G.W. Bush and the guy that thinks he's an African, which he's not. He's an Indonesian, and he's a Muslim, and he's a faggot. And his name's Barry Swatero, so if you don't like me calling you a faggot, Barry, just go ahead and tell everybody what your name is and come and get it. You're next. What the gentleman, I call him Mike Delta, his initials are MD, he's in the chat room as Mad Dog. he's emerging from a 15-year legal battle that everyone in the battle, except for him and two of his attorneys, one Catholic and one Jewish, everyone else was on the other team, and they were all terribly evil and corrupt. And bad news for them, they were also involved in the cover-up of 9/11. So, you know, I never like to say names, right, David? Yeah, okay, I'll take that as a right. I never like to name names. So if anybody thinks I'm talking about Senator Carl Levin, whatever, the guy from Michigan who stepped down the same day Jay Rockefeller from West Virginia stepped down, if anybody thinks that I'm talking about Carl Levin or Jay Rockefeller or Chuck the Schmuck Schumer or John Fathead McCain, I don't know where you're getting that idea, because I would never be so bold as to say that Carl Levin, Jay Rockefeller, Chuck the Schmuck, and Lumpjaw, I would never be so bold as to put those four horrendously evil names in one sentence and claim that they covered up 9/11. But guess what? They did. And so that's the pre-Trump. That's why this guy was jacked around. Now, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't think I am, I think he clearly said that the fund amount being transferred from DOJ Asset Forfeiture Fund is a plural B. Okay, if that's correct, and I'm pretty sure I heard him correctly, if that's correct, what he's saying is the transfer from my sister's DOJ Asset Forfeiture Fund into a numbered and renumbered account at Fidelity in Boston is, if it's multiple B, the lowest number it could be is 2.00 billion, and it could be more than that. And that's why I said earlier when the guy was, and I know who the guy is, I talked to him 2 or 3 times a day, when he started talking, I just gave everybody a caveat, a notice in the chat room. I said, listen to this. This is the ranch funding. So, David, it's been quite a week. Last Thursday, Denise and I were advised that her visa was at an office called Delta X-Ray in London. And I got that message from Denise at 20 to 4. And I said, what time's the office close? And she said 4. And I said, well, pardon my French, but let's stop screwing around and communicate with them and tell them to keep it there. Do not move that visa. So then if people look back, you can see a picture of a guy that's vertically challenged, and his name is Paul Jones. He's a good friend of Denise and a good friend of myself. And he bought Denise's what is it, WRX? Yep, WRX Subaru. And so Paul Jones drove Denise in to get her visa. She got her visa back physically on Friday by, Friday at 2 p.m. or 10 to 2. I was sitting in the hot kitchen and I saw the blue Subaru drive up. And so I knew they had to be driving fast because it's a 4-hour drive and they'd only been gone 3 hours and 50 minutes. So then once I saw the visa, which gave me a great sense of accomplishment and peace and thanksgiving and honor to God for arranging it. Once I saw the visa, my AAA personality went to check flights out of London, and Saturday, the next day, it looked like we would have had a cakewalk to get 2 seats in first class. Well, it turns out that that's what it looked like on Friday. By Saturday, we couldn't have gotten on. Sunday, we did get on. Sunday night, we got back here. Monday night, we tried to catch up with our sleep. Tuesday night, same. I think today's Thursday. It was Tuesday night, I got a call from someone who a lot of people in the chat room would know if I gave them some hints, like the guys from Canada, that type of thing. But he said, hey, Field, I want to talk to you about your wife's visa. And I said, well, I'd like to talk to you too, but I'm extremely busy right now. Can we talk after 6 p.m. tonight? He said, oh, we can talk next week. And I said, no, not in this case. I want to talk to you tonight. I'm very interested in what you have to say about my wife's visa. So I called him that night. He said, Field, do you have any idea why your wife got her visa approved on Thursday and why it was available for pickup on Friday? And I said, I think I might know where you're going, but why don't you just go where you want to go, and I'll tell you if I'm on the same wavelength. He said Trump or Trump's Marines ensured that that visa was provided. And he said, just take a look at where Trump was on Friday the 13th. And I said, yeah, I know exactly where he was. He was marching around with the Queen, explaining the new paradigm. And that guy confirmed that. And not only that, but now you just heard Mike Delta think back to September of 2015, when, in fact, General Joseph Dunford took over the leadership of the United States of America, and he took the nuclear codes and the day-to-day leadership away from Obama. And it's what's called a silent or a quiet coup. There was a military coup. Now, if they had done a real military coup, like a lot of the third world nations, it would have scared everybody and confused those that weren't scared. But that's the truth, and the truth will come out. But you know, the people in both parties, Republican, Democrat, they're both equally deluded because they don't realize that both parties are the two wings of the same sick bird. The same sick bird in this context is the electoral process in the United States of America, where every 4 years we're given two bad choices. Now, I'm not making this up, and I would like someone in the chat room to confirm that on today's yahoo.com front page, there is a story that Joe the pedophile Biden might run against Trump. And if that isn't that would be like a 75 to 25 election results, knowing that the election results are all faked. But even Rupert Murdoch, if it's Trump against the pedophile Biden, even Rupert Murdoch wouldn't go lower than 75-25. He wouldn't dare put 51-49 because Rupert, as corrupt as he is, he's not completely stupid, whereas it appears that Joe Biden is nearly completely stupid. David, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. Very exciting.
Yes.
So continuing with the 160 terabyte transfer of data from Putin to Trump, assuming it's true, this article says some amazing things. Here's a couple of paragraphs. Numerous high-ranking officials and well-known wealthy people have been caught red-handed, scheming together and with foreign governments, along with radical leftist billionaires, both inside and outside the US, to foment and finance extraordinary acts of political, social, and cultural chaos, including riots, violent attacks, political unrest, and more. Some high-level managers at gigantic social media companies have received literally millions of dollars in payoffs to establish or use under-the-radar company policies, to impose severe censorship on certain views, and to silence certain people, oftentimes without the knowledge or consent of the highest executives or boards of directors of those companies. These payoffs usurp actual executive power in some giant social media. Now, further down, at the highest level of these intercepts, there are allegedly names like Soros, Rothschild, and very recognizable others. And that's consistent with the hammering that we've given of the late Victor Rothschild, who was a former chairman of NM Rothschild and Sons Limited, that is the fifth oldest English bank, dating back to 1811, and in my personal opinion, established its hands around the neck of the United States Patent and Trademark Office very early after 1811 through the Anglo-American superintendent, Dr. William Thornton. And I think Rothschild has never relinquished its control over the patent office. They talk about a very significant number of US intelligence community persons who are sadly caught. It is now clear there is a cadre of people inside the US intelligence community who have been misusing their positions to do things they were never cleared to do, the kinds of things that get people indicted, tried, convicted, and executed under our federal legal system. Yes, you read that right. Certain specific US intel people could literally face the death penalty for some of the things they have now been positively caught doing. So I have to say, Phil, it gives me no pleasure that these people are now caught in the headlights. I think in many cases the journey that they took to arrive at the state that they're in now and the liabilities that they face include blackmail and entrapment. And let me just close with a brief description of how this Starnet Communications thing came down. As you know, there was a raid on Starnet Communications in Vancouver on the 20th of August 1999 with 100 law enforcement people, including apparently 2 SWAT teams from south of the border. Now, I'm fairly sure, and I'm actually making inquiries, that those SWAT teams didn't arrive with the permission of the Canadian government, but they were sent by senior executive service colleagues of your sister. There was one group from the IRS and one group from Customs, of which your sister is, I believe, a director of the ICE Foundation, looking after the interests of 49,000 people involved in immigration and customs, both active and retired. Anyway, that raid took away all of the servers of what turns out to be a massive global criminal network engaged in death pools, child pornography, and money laundering. And the question that I think we're now approaching, and I'm actually working on the storyboard for either a movie or a play that would explain that, is where did the servers for that network that was engaged in death pool and child pornography and money laundering go? And my favorite target is the 25th floor of building number 7, the Salomon Smith Barney building in New York. And there, that facility, if it had been installed, would have allowed them, whilst they were switching from a training exercise simulation through AWACS to a live fire event, identify any individual who might be tempted to blow the whistle or serve as an expert witness on what really happened on 911. They would be in a position to blackmail them if they had previously managed to book a seat up to the Picton Pig Farm, where up to 100 prostitutes over a period of 96 to 2002 were shot with dum-dum bullets, apparently containing Novichok or hallucinogenics or anticoagulants or a nerve agent, so that they could be filmed in an agonizing death throe prior to being fed to a boar outside or cooked and eaten in cannibal feast. Sorry to be nasty there, Field, but I think we have to cut straight to the chase. But it does mean, I think, a significant number of people who will be accused of treason or murder we will find have been blackmailed, and they may prefer to commit suicide before they face their friends and their families. But hopefully justice will prevail. Over to you.
Okay, hang on. Go ahead. You want to be on the speaker? Hang on. Okay, David, listen again. Here comes some more news. Go ahead, Mike Delta.
Okay, is everybody ready to listen?
Yeah, everybody's ready to listen. Go ahead.
All right, Phil. Look, I just went to my Fidelity account, and it's now open and addresses me as Michael. So the structure is open to receive. The question is when. And I would suggest to you this sum of money was due decades ago when the events that are punitive happened. So I would suggest any moment is what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
All right, take care.
Okay, bye-bye. I'm going to let him calm down after calling me, and then I'm going to tell you what he really meant. Okay, what he really meant was that when he blew the whistle on an aviation safety related matter about an aircraft that was unsafe to operate, that he was asked to operate a second time after he turned it down the first time. That was a very simple thing, and the people in the FAA and the FBI and these political offices should have supported him, but they didn't. And when they didn't support him, time went on, and it turns out that such aviation safety reports are generally suppressed. And that's why I use the I use these names: Carl Levin of Michigan, Jay Rockefeller of West Virginia, Chuck the Schmuck of New York, and Hothead McCain, the little pissant from Arizona, who, by the way, I filed serious formal treason charges on the 6th of April of 2008. Would somebody in the chat room that likes to post things, please Google John McCain plus treason plus Tim Pawlenty, Pawlenty, plus my name, Field McConnell, and you'll see that on the 6th of April of 2008, I filed treason charges on John McCain. That's 10 years ago, and that little slime bag is still wandering around, lying through his teeth, although his teeth are probably getting ready to fall out due to alleged ill health. Do I disrespect or do I feel any vengeance towards John McCain? Yes, I do, because he's the third generation of John S. McCains that are traitors to the United States of America. His grandfather graduated from Annapolis in 1906. On the 8th of August of, and I could be one day off, but I don't think I am. On the 8th of August of 1942, John McCain, the eldest, was asked by his commander to get his crappy old land-based Navy patrol planes up in the air and take a look at the Savo Island Strait. And that is a narrow piece of water between Savo Island, S-A-V-O, and California Island. And the reason his boss wanted John McCain, the eldest, to take his shitty old patrol airplanes, and those are land-based airplanes in the Navy. Real pilots in the Navy, whether they're in helicopters, jets, or tilt, rotary wing, or propeller-driven aircraft like the Hawkins, the real guys in the Navy, Marine Corps, and even the Coast Guard trained on carriers. But the real effective fighting force is carrier-borne, and we have 12 nuclear carriers right now, and that's just our attack carriers. We got a bunch of LPHs, landing platform helicopter, which can take F-35, the vertical takeoff and landing F-35B jets, which over this week in Farnborough, there's an air show going on all week. They've sold a whole bunch of Airbuses and Boeings, but they've also got a brand new Gulfstream called the G600 being demonstrated. But when Denise and I were at her home in Frimley Green last week, we were watching an F-35 buzz around. In fact, Denise, yep, she's paying attention. I knew she was, but I didn't know if she was looking at me or looking at her device. But we would go out to the back porch and we'd watch this F-35 fly around. And I said to her, and I don't know if she thought I was being snobby, I don't think so, but a lot of you would think I was being snobby if you could have heard what I told her. I said, I can't believe that guy's going out every day and practicing, flying around by himself, doing stuff that's not difficult to do. But he did. But, you know, to his credit, whoever that pilot was, the UK, the RAF, or whatever they call it, the UK forces just got those F-35s sometime between mid-June and mid-July. We're not beyond mid-July. So somebody can Google it over there in the UK. The F-35s were going to fly right by Llangollen, northern Wales, when they arrived. And the reason they were going to fly by Llangollen, northern Wales, was to honor the dam busters, which were RAF bombers that had a technique for blowing the dams in Germany. But life goes on, and there's a whole lot of balls in the air. And I'll tell you that Carl Levin, Chuck the Schmuck, Jay Rockefeller, and John McCain have no balls. They're cowards. And I personally will participate gladly in bringing them down and charging them with treason. And if anyone doubts that, all you have to do is Google Tim Pawlenty, John McCain, treason, and my name, and you'll see that on the 6th of April of 2008, I filed treason charges. Now, as it pertains to Carl Levin, Jay Rockefeller, who both stepped down from Senate on exactly the same day, they're trying to put distance between them and their crimes against airline pilots. And I'm a good example of that, but let me rattle off some other examples. Wayne O. Witter, W-O-W, when he was at Delta, they called him Captain Wow because his initials were W-O-W. Well, he was treated corruptly by the U.S. government. So was Newton Dixon from Continental. So was Michael Driscoll from Spirit. So was John Stepetich from Continental. So was Dan Handley from United. And all of those pilots and myself did the same thing. They reported serious and egregious safety issues to the appropriate authorities. In my case, I reported it. In fact, I don't know if Telford Russian can Google this. And if Gobsmack was here, he could. But this is a tough one. I wrote a letter. So if you want to pull up this letter, you need to put in Field McConnell, letter, Ken, K-E-N, Highlander, H-Y-L-A-N-D-E-R, Ken Highlander, 10 December 2006. And then I think if you really want to enjoy this, then put in the hour of the day, 21:59:10. That means 10 seconds after 21:59 on Sunday, the 10th of December of 2006, I wrote a letter to Northwest Airlines, to FBI, to FAA, and to the Airline Pilots Association, and also to a Navy intelligence function in the Washington, D.C. Metroplex. And guess what all those people did? Yep, you guessed it, jack shit. Right there is a multi-trillion-dollar lawsuit just waiting, and it's coming. Now, why do I say multi-trillion? Because an attorney over in Malaysia told me face-to-face, when I was oversharing with them face-to-face, who took their MH370, where they took it to, and then what they did with the evidence, and I will address that in a moment. But the attorney that I was speaking to, and a lot of people in the chat room know the guy's name, so go ahead and print it. I'm not going to say Matthias Chang, but if you print it, then it'll be out there. Anyway, the man's name, who I didn't mention, Matthias Chang, he looked at me with a sort of a gleeful smile and said, "This is going to be the world's first $1 trillion lawsuit." And I said, "Okay, you're losing me. I got the $1 trillion. That's a nice number. But who's the defendant? I know who the plaintiffs would be, the airline, MAS, Malaysian Airline Systems, and or Malaysia, the nation. But who would the defendant be?" And he said, "Boeing." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Because Boeing provided this aircraft, which was unsafe." And I said, "Well, if you guys insist," and I get along with him really well. He's really a nice guy. He's got a great sense of humor. And I wouldn't want to be on the opposite side of him in court due to his skill and his education. But I said, if you guys do file that against Boeing, I'm going to be on the other side of the courtroom, because Boeing, it was not a Boeing feature that did it. It was General Electric. General Electric put the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot in the Boeing aircraft without Boeing's knowledge. And that's pretty complex and hard to believe. So just let's stipulate that I'm right. What is the name? Jeffrey Immelt was the CEO of Boeing at the time of 9/11. He just stepped down last year, and I don't know why he would step down, because people like Abel Danger are saying he's got the highest company-paid life insurance in corporate America. And then somebody with a loud mouth somewhere said, yeah, that's because he helped not only participate in 9/11, I'll say that again, not only did General Electric participate in 9/11, but then they tried to cover it up. So Jeffrey Immelt, see you later, pal. Jeffrey Immelt's gone, Jay Rockefeller's gone, Carl Levin's gone, Senator Ron Johnson will probably be gone. Senator Tammy Baldwin, both of these from Wisconsin, will probably be gone. All these people who've covered up 9/11 and the safety issues about airlines, you guys have all dug your own grave. And not only can you crawl in now, but there's a bunch of us who are going to line up and piss on your grave as soon as the service is over. David, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Field. So I was just looking at some of the StarNet material just to make sure that we have the essence of a RICO, a racketeering influence corrupt organization, launched in 1996, the same year that Piggy Palace Good Time Society got its license to hold the raves for social and entertainment events out at the pig farm, which translates into abducting prostitutes from the downtown east side, taking them out into the barn in front of an audience of 1,700 to 2,000 people, many of them flown up, I believe, on your sister's Con Air planes, where they would be able to watch and bet on the women being shot with dum-dum bullets, and then over a period of minutes or seconds dying, and they could take the bets and transmit the snuff films in pay-per-view to elite hotel rooms around the world, possibly including Bill Clinton, who on 9/11 was apparently at the Sheraton Port Douglas Hotel in Queensland, and that would be consistent with StarNet's betting systems, where you could bet real-time interactive betting on event outcomes, including the time of a major hit, because with the cameras outside the Pentagon, they show an interesting date and time, because this was the morning of 9/11. The date is shown as September the 12th, 2001, and I think that date stamp is coming via the AWACS system overhead from bets or a small consortium of killers in the vicinity of Bill Clinton, who would have helped to organize this hit of 9/11. So I think StarNet will eventually be recognized as a RICO. It hasn't gone away because the systems that were confiscated were transferred down to building number 7. And building 7, as everyone knows, was, well, most of it was vaporized on the morning of 9/11. No, the afternoon at 5:20, even though the announcement that it had collapsed was given by Jane Stanley of the BBC to the anchorman in the UK at about 5 o'clock, when the building was still standing behind it. So I'm working on this storyboard. I think, adding to what your steel trap memory field is, they are on the run. I think there's an awful lot of unraveling of the network, because this isn't a personal affair between you and your sister, or myself and, let's say, Trump's right-hand man, Wilbur Ross, who would have taken over the model from Victor Rothschild when Ross became senior director at NM Rothschild and Sons in New York, and helped to restructure Trump's debt. So Ross knows about Trump, and I presume now Trump knows about Ross, so that should be an interesting exchange of views. So we covered a lot of ground field. Look forward to the next show. I'm so glad that Denise is with you, and good luck with the rally, if that's the right word, in Plum City.
No, it's the Plum City Plunge, but just a minute, I'll ask Denise to just say goodbye to you too. You want to say something to David?
Bye, David. Have a good day.
Bye.
Could you hear that?
I didn't hear sorry, I interrupted. I didn't hear the last words.
I said have a good day.
Thank you very much, Denise.
Okay.
Bye for now.
All right, well, we'll talk to you later. And do you want to hang up, or do you want me to shoot you down?
I'll go.
Okay, that's good. Aha. So David's gone, and I'm just going to studdle here. I'm taking a very short delay. I want to check to make sure that neither Marcy or Braveheart's out here, and I'll be right back. And you can stare at Denise till I come back. Oh. Oh, good. Nobody's here. So we can go home and then come back here later. But okay, so Mark's not here and Marcy's not here. I can speak for Marcy and Mark both, saying they wish they were here. Mark locked himself out of his bedroom at the B&B, which is called About Time, and that's run by Phil and Mary, and the address is Maiden Rock, but it's effectively Plum City. And it's 2:30, and so we won't have Mark's show today. It's raining outside right now lightly. It's going to rain more as the day goes on. We will start to get people filtering in here. Oh, actually, probably in an hour. Anita from Ottawa, Kimberly from San Francisco, and Kathy McKaylee from New York City will be here. I'm just going to do some housekeeping items now. We got 100 copies of Field of Honor, and I don't want anyone out there to think that it's worth the money to buy this book for what you're going to read, unless you like seeing the most evil and egotistical and AFU people in America get their ass handed to them by a loose cannon. By the way, this, in case Craig Peterson sees this later, I don't think he's here right now. Let me look. It's Craig starts with a K. Oh, I see Liverish Peasant. Oh, Live P, that's short for Liverish Peasant. Thank you very much for taking those pictures of Denise and I last May. I think it was May 20th of 2017 up at the AV8 where I spoke on. In fact, watch this. There's a lot of history right here in this office. Here is the AV8 speaking I'm alluding to. And a lot of these people that are being exposed for pedophilia, well, their exposure, I can't say it started with this 75-minute presentation, which is available for free on YouTube. All you have to do is go to YouTube and put in AV8, Alpha Victor 8, stands for Alternative View. And there's a version that's posted by, I can put Ian R. Crane. And there's another, the same exact content is posted by Abel Danger. But if you put in my name and pedophilia and Pizzagate and AV8, it'll come up. But this book right here, which I'm the guy who wrote the book. See my, well, that's the title, Field of Honor. In fact, let me honor the guy who came up with that. His name was David Smith, and he called me in mid-January, and he said, I was at home. I wasn't down here at the office, and Denise was in England. And David Smith said, Field, I want you to write a book for me. I said, okay, I'll write it. It'll be done in 2 weeks. And he said, well, you don't know what I want you to write about. And I said, it doesn't matter, because no matter what you tell me, I'm going to write about what I want anyway, because it's stream of consciousness. So I'll have the book done in 2 weeks. And he said, yeah, but I want you to write about Field of Honor. And I said, well, I sort of like the title, but why do you want me to do that? And he said, that's what you do every day, you honor your parents. And you know what? I try to. I try to honor my parents, Glenn and Eileen McConnell. I try to honor my wife, Denise, right there. But more important, I try to honor God, because God's put me in a very unique position with some very unique contacts. And I'm going to just name some of those contacts right now. And people might think I'm going to the top of the pile. No, I'm going to Zigzag. Haven't seen you around, Zigzag, but welcome back. I love the YouTubes you put out. And I just want you and Zigzag and everyone else to understand that Jason Goodman's going to be getting here tonight, and he's going to be doing some live YouTube broadcasts from Plum City over the next 48 hours. And I just got a call 2 days ago, I think. Denise and I have been extremely busy since Tuesday of last week, because Tuesday of last week we got a signal that the visa was going to be produced. Thursday, the visa arrived at the DX office. Don't even try to understand that. Friday, Denise and Paul Jones picked up the visa. Saturday, we should have tried leaving, but I didn't want to put pressure on Denise and her son, George. So we tried leaving Sunday, and there's 0% chance we should have gotten out of London on Sunday, and yet we did. Now, how do you rationalize that? You guys can rationalize it any way you want. I'll tell you the truth. God did it. And so we got home Sunday only because of an act of God. But anyway, so Zigzag, nice to see you back. Besides Jason Goodman coming here to broadcast, John B. Wells has asked me 2 nights ago to be on his show on Saturday night at 9:30. That's Caravan to Midnight, and I will be. And some people might say, well, that's rude to your guest. And I'd say, no, exactly the opposite, because I don't do it on purpose, but I have a history of dominating the conversation sometimes. And I don't do that during the plunge. What I've done historically is while the plungers are all getting into the groove, like at 9 o'clock on Friday night, 9 o'clock on Saturday night, I disappear, I go home. Now this Saturday night, I'm not going to go home. I'm going to come down here at 9:30 and do a live interview with John B. Wells. I have no idea what we'll talk about, but you know, I'm not shy about naming names like George H.W. Bush, John McCain, and by the way, I badmouthed his grandfather, but suffice it to say that his father is the guy who covered up the USS Liberty for the benefit of Lyndon B. Johnson. Lyndon Johnson set up the attack on the Liberty, and he wanted the Liberty on the bottom of the ocean, and it would have been there had it not been for the fact that the Israelis flying the French Mirages with Egyptian paint, they didn't put enough rounds on target to sink it. The USS Amberjack, which was a U.S. submarine, was at periscope depth in launch range for torpedo range, and it actually fired a torpedo because the Amberjack had been ordered by LBJ to sink the Liberty if the Israeli Mirage jets couldn't. And so the Amberjack, I got to stop right there and disambiguate. There's two USS Amberjacks. The original Amberjack was lost about February of '43 in a combat patrol in the South Pacific. And then they immediately built another Amberjack that was probably commissioned in 1946. During, you know, it would have been ordered during World War II, and by the time they got it built, World War II was over. But that Amberjack, a U.S. submarine, actually took a shot with a torpedo at the USS Pueblo. Now, some people say, oh, Field, you ought to shut your mouth or you're going to be in big trouble. Well, people that are that timid should just go hide in their closets and play with themselves. I'm not that timid. I know that George H.W. Bush did this. I know that LBJ did that. I know Christine Marcy did this. I know Clinton's Party of Three killed a lot of black people in Katrina and 05 and down in Haiti in, was that March of 2010 or 2011? I don't know. But they used the same U-2, 80-1076. And then the person who was penciled in to be the next president, that would be Hillary Rodham Clinton. Not that I want to mention her name because I'm scared shitless that she might cause me to have a heart attack like she caused Tom Clancy to have a heart attack on the 1st of October of maybe 2012. Somebody want to confirm that? What year did Tom Clancy die of a heart attack? It was the 1st of October, and it could have been 2012, could have been 2011, doesn't really matter. The point is, we don't need to be afraid of these evil people. There's probably, in this country, there's probably only 30 or 40 that are worth hanging. And the rest of them are such cowardly chicken shits that when they see the wheelchair dangling from a rope, or when they see my sister have the trap pulled by her brother, that's me, you know, the other people are going to realize, hey, there's a new sheriff in town. Yes, there is a new sheriff. The sheriff's name is Donald Trump. Another sheriff in his posse is Vladimir Putin. The United States is not going to be lost. The United States is going to be sequentially made more secure. It was done on Friday the 13th when President Trump explained the New Deal to the Queen. That was something that was forecast in 2015 and 2016 by a fellow in Canada I talked to 2 nights ago. Monday in Helsinki, Putin and Trump exchanged a couple of things. 160 terabytes of information came from Trump, and these are intercepts of messages. And they just so happen to be the same messages that came from North Korea when the little short guy, Rocket Man, met with Trump in Singapore, and there were only 2 people in the room besides those 2 men. Rocket Man and Trump had their interpreters with them, and a bunch of electronic data was given to the United States by North Korea. And North Korea, by the way, for a long time has been an outpost of the CIA that they use just to agitate and destabilize the world. Okay, I think that's enough for today. Clancy died 10/1. Yes, of course, I know that. It's October 1st. Now, how did I know that? Because it's the day before my birthday, which is October 2nd. And Shane D. from Wales said he died on October 1st of 2013. So I was close. I think I said 2012, but I don't know. One hung low. That's funny. John, oh, thanks for whoever put up, oh, it's Emancipation. Thanks for putting that John B. Wells thing up, because I'm going to go put that back in the radio show ad. Okay, Agent Bugs said, Jason may be Mossad. Yep, he could be. Doesn't matter to me. Did you hear what Bugs just said? Yeah. Bugs has met Denise and I, and but see, I don't care if somebody's Mossad. I don't care. I don't care if Trump did something that he may be ashamed of. If he did it 30 years ago, it doesn't matter to me. What's he done in the last week? Well, he's told the United Kingdom that you're done oppressing America, and he's told Vladimir Putin that if they work together, they can take care of George Soros, they can take care of the New World Order, they can do away with the IMF, they can do away with the Rothschild bankers, they can do away with the UN, they can do away with the IRS. Yep, that's what I just said. You just watch. They can do away with all these things. Oh, NATO. I mean, who needs NATO? I think the Royal Air Force has like 3 airplanes, and they got a couple of boats out there in Plymouth. But the Rolls-Royce propulsion systems on those frigates, they don't work. They've got an aircraft carrier somewhere. Well, I hope they take a good look at what they might refer to as after steering. I'm just going to say that one more time for the benefit of anybody who's listening in the UK. After steering. Because it would be a shame if the Queen Elizabeth II aircraft carrier had the same future as the Bismarck. Now, the Bismarck was a great big battleship in World War II that took a hit on its rudder, and the people in after steering couldn't make it go straight, so the big battleship was doing circles, and the rest of the British military made short work of the Bismarck, I guess. Anyway, it's been a long show, and I think that, somebody just said, is the reset happening? Yes, it is happening. Some of the tiers have already been given some of their money, and when I say some, that's S-O-M-E, not S-U-M. But the money is coming in increments and waves, and as you think back, maybe an hour ago or so, MD, Mike Delta, was here, and he's no longer here in the chat room, but he's still listening. But he commented that there's a transaction taking place between the U.S. DOJ Asset Forfeiture Fund, which my sister and Eric Holder started in 1984, 1985. And isn't it lovely that if Denise and I end up on a ranch in Athens, Texas, where we will serve veterans, patriots, and God, isn't it nice to know that my sister paid for the ranch? And if there's a Gulfstream or a Falcon private jet operating for the ranch going back and forth to England and other places, wouldn't it be nice to know that my sister paid for that too? Now, my sister wouldn't voluntarily give me 1 watt of spit if my body was on fire, and guess what? I wouldn't do anything for her either. We may have been born into the same family, but my parents were Christian patriots. My sister's not. And my sister can answer to whoever it is she believes in. I know who I believe, and I believe that God has had my sister's ass. So with that in mind, if somebody would please put up the big red button, and I'll fumble because I said something about zigzag. I'm going up to sound guy I recognize. Shane I didn't recognize, but I do now. I received a refund. Yeah, there's people that are going to be getting lots of money here pretty soon. Autopilot in Norway, Ono Moko, who has a 47 Cadillac. There's the big red button. I'll watch for the rest. NTTM Mensa Max, yep. Matta's Hatter. I think that maybe I got an email from that person this week. Livery's Peasant, I already talked about. I'm still watching. There's Jack Mac, who can't be at the plunge, unfortunately. Ginger Cookie, I'm still looking for the 321, not yet. Eager Beaver, thanks for some of the stuff you put up. Welcome back again, George Holdsworth.